People often ask me what the upside looks like for a searcher if they buy and run a small business, and it's actually quite attractive. And that's because searching for, buying, and then successfully operating a small business is actually quite hard. But what most people don't realize is that if you just keep the performance of the business the same and grow revenue by a small percentage each year, the outcome is actually potentially life changing. This is a story of an actual transaction that we invested in where the searcher found and bought a business. And I've rounded the numbers here to make the math a little bit easier. So this business actually did more than $1 million of earnings, but we're going to pretend that it did exactly $1 million of earnings. The business was actually bought for, I think, a 3.2 times multiple, but we're going to just say 4 times to make the math easy. This is the actual breakdown. So 75% SBA loan, 2% of the equity came from the searcher, 13% from investors like ourselves, and then 10% seller financing. And that went to fund the purchase price of, in this example, $4 million, with a little bit of money for deal fees and a little bit of money for cash to the balance sheet. In this transaction, let's say the searcher takes a $100,000 salary and that increases by 5% a year. Let's say investors get a 2 times step up on their equity, which means that the searcher owns about 73% of the business and investors get a 10% preferred return, which is pretty typical. We're going to look at 2 scenarios. One is a base case and one is a little bit more optimistic. In the base case, let's assume 5% a year revenue growth, everything else stays the same, and that the business is sold for the same 4 times multiple after 10 years. The searcher will get $1.26 million in salary and $5.74 million in profit distributions and sale proceeds for a total of $7 million in the base case. In an upside case, let's assume that the searcher can grow revenue by 10% a year. Again, margins stay the same, and then exits after 10 years for a 5 times multiple instead of the 4 times. This bumps up cash flow from distributions and the exit to $12.3 million for a total of 13.5 or $1.35 million a year over the 10 years on average. Investors also do very well with a 33% internal rate of return in the base case and between a 5.6 times multiple on invested capital in the base case and a 9 times in the upside case. If we zoom out, the searcher invested $100,000 initially and then makes between $5.7 and $12.3 million in profits from this business, even after their salary of the $1.26 million over 10 years. And again, this is possible for both the searcher and investors, even with a business that just grows revenue by 5% a year. This is why we're so excited about this asset class, because the returns, especially for the searcher, are so much better than the typical economics of doing a venture-backed startup, for example. If you're interested in working on a transaction like this as a searcher, or you want exposure to this asset class as an investor, feel free to reach out. We'd love to chat. And if you want a copy of the Excel model we use to do all this math so you can play with the assumptions yourself, just DM me or comment model and I'll send you the Excel file.